Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. Now, if you or anyone else that you know wants to start your own podcast, using Buzzsprout makes it so much easier. That's because Buzzsprout gets your show listed in every major podcast platform. So that's your Apple Podcast, your Spotify, your Google Podcast, your Podcaster, your iHeartRadio, all the major podcasts. The great thing is that if you follow the link in the show notes, it lets Buzzsprout know that I sent you and gets you a $20 Amazon gift card for you to sign up for a paid plan. And this also helps you support this show. So click on it or recommend somebody to click using the link in the show notes. Now let's get into today's episode. My guest is Mbali Gwacela. She's South African and she's studying and lecturing at the University of Natal. In 2019, Mbali got awarded by the University of KwaZulu-Natal as a recipient of the Wonder Woman in Science, and she was termed the accidental scientist. In this episode, she explains that she initially had no plans of actually getting into the science field as she was in the social science field. She entered into the agriculture sciences in her honors program and has since stayed. She explains that her adjustment into the science is due to her hard work ethic and her ability to always strive to do her best. Currently, she's a doctoral candidate, and Mbali discusses her study that examines the local food systems, particularly community food production and consumption. Furthermore, Mbali explains how in her PhD journey she was forced to change her supervisors 3 times. She gives us advice, especially to other postgrads, on the supervisor-student relationship. This is a must, and this is something that if you are a postgrad, you should listen to this. Lastly, we also talk about how she deals with her mental health due to the constant pressures of always feeling like you need to do well, especially when external factors such as family crisis or this current pandemic is going on. And this information transcends just people in the STEM field, and I think it's important to everybody out there. Now, if you want to hear about all of this and so much more, let's take a listen. Hi, Mbali. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Anne. Thanks for having me on the show.
I am so excited to chat with you, and also because, we are fellow Black women in sciences, so this is really exciting to have, a colleague of mine and for everybody to just get to know you.
I'm so excited. Oh, my word. I have been sneaking up on the podcast, and you've been interviewing such incredible people, and I honestly feel honored to be on the root of science, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. Yes, we are Black females, which makes it even more exciting. Yeah, looking forward to it.
All right, so let's get into it, Mbali. So give us an introduction. Who is Mbali? Where you from? Where are you based? And what are you currently doing?
Okay, so I'm Mbali Gwacela. I was born in a township in Marion Hill called Kwasanti, but I've been staying in Maritzburg for about 10, 11 years now. I'm lecturing in University UKZN, and I'm also pursuing a doctorate in food security. So I am within the agricultural side of the sciences, if I can put it that way. So yes, that's what I do.
Okay, perfect. So in the agriculture side of the sciences, it's still a science. I know people like to say, no, it's not really a science, but it's still
goodness. I mean, even the very basis of life, which starts from soil, is a science. You can't just grow anything anywhere. You have to understand the composition of the soil, and that's a whole science, in itself. So farming is it's the most important science of all, if I can be biased. Because we all have to eat. We all survive from the soil. So understanding all of that is like, I believe it's the basis of existence, if I can, put it that way. So yeah, science and agriculture, it's very scientific. Guys must stop saying that. You don't have to be in a lab, with all the other lab equipment as such. But definitely agriculture is a science. Definitely, yeah.
I completely agree. In a very biased opinion as well, because that's also my thoughts. But but anyway, before we get into the science, you are an avid coffeeholic, a little birdie told me, so tell me, and you are the type that can only like function when you have a type of coffee, or do you need to have like a certain amount of coffee for you to function? How does that work?
Sure. One thing that really makes me smile is that smell of coffee, like a good, strong coffee. I'm a coffeeholic, but I try to have about 2 cups a day, not more than that. And my hobbies do include hunting for new coffee spots where I can sit down, do some reading. And I found coffee shops very stimulating. And if I discover a new spot, I get very excited. And then I get over it. But I love hunting for new spots. Anybody who knows me, they always ask where the next coffee spot is, and I never fail. That's how much I love coffee. I actually wanted to do a study on coffee whilst I didn't know what I want to do in my master's, but then I got over it pretty quickly. It wasn't very realistic.
That would have been very interesting. Interesting to kind of touch on your hobby. But
maybe I will.
Yeah.
I'm saying maybe I might just as a passion project, but yeah, it ends there.
Not a research one.
Nah, not a research one.
All right. Speaking of research, I just want you to take us through, what actually got you into this whole field of the sciences. So what are some of the influences? Did you always know that this is something that you want to do, or was it something that just kind of happened by accident?
Yeah. Well, funny enough, when I got the award last year for Wonder Woman in Science, I got termed the accidental scientist, which is very true, because I got into the sciences by accident. I never had it in my career outline, if I can put it that way, to be in the field. And I actually got into it through rejection. So, I wasn't accepted into a social science honors degree that I desperately wanted to do. So, which was within the environmental sciences, being a tree hugger, basically. So when I didn't get into that honors degree, I really felt like I do not want to go out and work, because I heard so much about, if you're new from university, you're entering into a workspace, people that are mean, they'll tell you to do coffee, they'll just be mean people. And I'm not a mean person. So I was like, how do I stay in the university longer so that I don't have to go and work outside in the world? So then I read up about food security, and then that's where I signed up. And that's how I ended up in the agricultural sciences, because I was rejected in a social science field. And that's how I accidentally made it into science. So I never really thought that I would be in this field. And because I had this misconception, this field is for people who are smart, people who did, got high marks in maths and physics in high school. And I was not that person. So I had very fixed, mistruths, if I can put it that way, about the field. But when I got into the field, I realized that actually it's not that hard. It's actually fun, because it's a true representation of what the real world elements are like. And that's how I fell in love with the agricultural sciences, and that's how I stayed there. So if I wasn't rejected for honors, I don't think I would be where I am in the sciences today. So I really got here by accident, to be honest.
Wow, what an interesting story. you know. So just out of curiosity, where did you think in your your honors year, where were you looking at where you'd want to actually be? What was the concept, like 5 years time? What was your 5-year plan before it all got mixed up?
I wanted to work for an environmentalist kind of field firm where they consult for development. So basically KZN, Ezemvelo wildlife. I really saw myself in that field, protecting the environment based on my undergrad degree, which is a social sciences. So I really thought that I would try and fight for the environment in fields or workplaces like Ezemvelo, KZN wildlife. Writing policies for companies and how they can mitigate their development so that it's not harmful to the environment, which was very social in that aspect, but not very scientific at all. That's what I wanted to do. I also wanted to work in a space where they teach geography. So I really wanted to be a geography teacher and teach more about the earth, environment as well. So I am a true tree hugger, and I honestly thought that's where I'm going to end up, either teaching geography or working for a firm that protects the environment against like harsh development projects. That's it. But now I'm in the dirt farming and teaching agriculture, which is completely different.
Yeah. So how was the adjustment from where you were saying, for example, it was more the social sciences, and then you come into the hard sciences? Was it easy for you to adjust? In particular, because you came for your master's, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So you came from your master's. How was that adjustment into this field now?
Yeah. It wasn't very difficult because even in my undergrad, we had a mixture of the scientific and the social science. So it wasn't that hard. But I think what made it easier for me is that I think I'm a hard worker. Like, I really want to do well when I do something because I know that I'm not a straight A student. So I promise you, I've always had to work extra hard because things don't really come, the first minute I read something. So what really helped a lot is, I think, just working hard and reading a lot more and understanding the subjects, which is what really helped me a lot. But also, like I said, what also assisted is that conjunction that my master's degree had with the social science. So it wasn't laboratory kind of work, which really helped because it wasn't like hardcore lab work in terms of the sciences, which really assisted me a lot because I don't think I would have done that well coming from a social science background. However, the work that I had put into understanding the field really did a world of wonders for me. So I think it was really pushing myself a lot because I know that things don't come very easy to me. I'm very old. So I always have to put in extra effort.
Oh, no, that's beautiful. I think, there are some people where, and I'm sure maybe other people might be like, oh my God, Mbali, you're doing so great, not knowing that you put in the work, So
it looks very easy from looking outside in, hey? But understanding the terms, getting into, beyond skin deep with the field that you're in, it takes a lot of work because you also want to be on par with your peers that have already been there for years. So for me, I really had to prove myself worthy of being in the sciences, which is why I had to work extra hard again. I think another thing that helped me was the fear of failure. I was so fearful of failing in the sciences that I had to really prove it to myself and then prove it to my supervisors and then prove it to the world. So I think it helped me, even though it really made me, it was very stressful, but it worked.
Oh, wow. What a story. And look at you made it because now you are a PhD student in food security, and your study looks at the local food system, particularly community food production and consumption. So, given that you've given us this really good context in terms of how you got here, tell us a bit more about the study and why it's so important.
Okay, so I have grown to be in love with food security issues, both at the local household, community level, even globally. I think that's one of my bedtime stories, reading about food security issues. My study currently, I'm investigating the impact of local food practices and how they're related to household food insecurity. So we know that food security is a state way of having reliable access to sufficient quantity of affordable and nutritious food. And if food is a basic need, then what are households doing or not doing that affects whether they are food insecure or not food insecure? And I'm making a comparative study. So the food systems in the rural areas compared to food systems that are in the urban area, and then making an analysis of the two. And through this, I really want to analyze the food system, comparing them, and then determining the drivers of food choices. So people in a certain community, what are the factors that make them consume a certain kind of food group? And then to determine if they farm the food that they're consuming, how does that contribute to their household food security status? And then to also determine the coping strategies. So sometimes households are able to produce food, which is great, but sometimes they aren't able to produce food or purchase food. So then what do they do in the events where they cannot access a certain food that they want? So if I can give you an example quickly.
Sure.
Right now we're going through the COVID-19 pandemic, and a lot of households are unable to access food for a variety of reasons, some such as people that have been laid off work. There's a high shortage of seedling supply. There's food prices have gone up. So then what are households doing as a way to cope with those changes? And those coping strategies, are they sustainable, and are they helping with food security? And then looking at the household food baskets, because that, of course, affects the nutrition and the health of that particular family. So that's like what I'm trying to find out.
Wow, that's interesting.
It's very broad. It's very broad, but it does deal a lot with food security, food accessibility, the kinds of food that we can get and the foods that we can't get. And with the foods you can't get, how do we cope with that kind of shortage? And then hopefully bring about some better solutions that people can implement in their own households and communities.
So with this type of the type of information, for example, with this COVID situation, once you get your results from the data that you're collecting, will this inform policies at like local government level and national level?
Yes, definitely it will. Not only policies, but also conducted, because it's a more of an action-based research. Based on our findings, then we can go back to the communities and then train them or transfer knowledge as to, okay, this is where your problem was kind of found. And then we assist them in, in helping solve that problem for themselves before, government can come and assist them. So for example, if they have land and you find that they aren't using it to produce their own food when they have shortages, we can then find ways on how we can help them to actually utilize the land that they have to plant certain crops so they can cover for the times where they aren't able to purchase food at all. So that's another form of intervention that the study will have in the future. Besides policy, because we know that policy is very good in paper, but when you come to implement.
I was actually going to ask that, like, how long does it take to implement? But since you answered that part, is there a lot of buy-in with the community? Because I know with agriculture, people are not so eager these days to farm and make their own food, which is probably the one major issue of why so many people are food insecure. So with these interventions that you suggest, is there buy-in with the community? And I don't know if this is maybe jumping ahead in terms of you haven't assessed it, but do you think it's sustainable that they will continue, let's say, even after you guys are not there to check up on them?
So the communities that we work with, they buy in when they actually see results. If they don't see results, if they don't see any changes, then them buying in, it's not going to be, you won't see that much. So we're lucky that the community that we work with, it's places that we've worked with before. So they have seen changes and impact of what we've been training them to do in the past. So they can see a little bit of change. However, it's the younger people that kind of we're trying to also bring into the game, because what we are finding is it's the older generation that are doing the farming mostly. But when they pass away, then it's the younger people that would have to take over. But it begins when they see value in the soil, when they see value of what they're doing. If they want to be business people, yet they have land, they would have to see the value in the land that they have so that they can actually start a business using that as an asset. But it all goes back to changing the way we see agriculture, which you're saying as well, Lubuti. It's not very popular. But the buy-in is there because we've had a working relationship with them for a period of time. So it's not that bad.
No, that's great. It sounds like this is a very interesting PhD. And while we are on the subject of your PhD, you mentioned that you changed your PhD supervisor 3 times. Could you explain? Because this was like very interesting to me.
Drama.
Oh my God, the drama. Could you explain how this happened? Number one. And also, because I know there's so many of us who might be going through really tough time with their supervisors, but we just get scared, and because of the fear. So, so how did you do it? Not once, not twice, 3 times.
It's hectic. Yeah. And we really undermine the impact that supervisors have, on our mental state, because I don't know if we're in denial, or we just choose not to focus on that area, but it really affects us a lot, Nje. It does. I think it's a relationship you have with your boss. If it sucks, then it really will affect you as an employer. But going back to me, I'm one of those students that had issues in the beginning, and it led to a lot of stress, and a lot of delay in my studies. So I've been doing my research for longer than I actually should have, because I had problems in the beginning. And what I failed to do was to actually, take charge of my study and not rely a lot or too much on supervisors. I think also not realizing that they are actually people and real life events happen to them. They also get pregnant. They can also go on sabbatical. They can also change their careers, So not having to make way for that really, really hurt me a lot, because things happened, but I wasn't able to sort of buffer them. So I really had just to give you a summary, I had supervisors that moved jobs, got promotions, and moved to other institutions. And then I had a supervisor who didn't have an idea that they were actually supervising me until we were in an admin office together, which is when he realized that, hey, why is my name on your form? Am I your supervisor? Which is crazy. It was really insane. But, I just think it boils down to communication. I really would advise students to really have a relationship with the person who's going to be supervising them, because your research projects really becomes your life. And if that element is not going well, it affects other areas in your life as well. So understand the supervisor as a person, so that even if they move to another institution, even if they get a job, even if they quit completely or go on maternity, you can still openly talk about whether they will continue working with you, or if you have to find another person to do it with. And if you have to find another person, it can be like something that is a smooth transition compared to something that is very hurtful to both people in the end. So I think as a student, what I would do differently is really connect with the supervisor, understand them, their work, whether I can fit into that as well. Also find out more about the person from other people as well, because you don't want to be surprised. Somewhere in the middle. So before you approach that person, really, really do your homework, because a lot of your interaction about your research is going to be with them for 3, 4, 5 years. So you really want to know what they're all about and if you can actually work with them. So don't over rely also on your supervisor, because their job is to supervise, not to actually, do 90% of your work. But if their supervision is great, then it makes your life a whole lot easier. But I think having a relationship and having clear communication lines does a world of a difference. And then finding strength to bounce back after, failed relationships. I think it also goes a long way. I think I failed to really talk openly about my problems in the beginning, because other students, other peers, they weren't facing the same challenges as me. So it was really hard for me to open up because nobody was going through that. But when I opened up to people of higher caliber besides my peers, for example, like a research director type of person, they're able to look at the situation from a professional point of view and like a mentor or a leader in a way, which really helped a lot. I just wish that I spoke to those people a lot earlier on rather than do my work in silence, because I really worked for a while alone, which then led to me changing my topic after finding a new supervisor. But I think I could have avoided that had I opened up to a person higher than me, who's got nothing to do with my study or nothing to do with my field. It really, really did help. So I think being open, if there's a problem, really try and address them head on. Be responsible for your work. If it's not working with the supervisor, really try and find ways to communicate and work it out, because it affects you as a person a lot. It can even make you quit your studies. I've heard stories of people quitting. And it doesn't really have to go that far if we know that there are other alternatives that we can take. So I think even for black female students who are doing postgrad, I think it's a lot worse. Maybe it's just me, but I think it's a lot lonely for us. It's a lot more challenging for us. It's a lot more depressing as well, because we just don't have that kind of support structure. I don't know about guys, but I know for females, it's really not easy. It's not easy. So really finding a good supervisor who can really communicate and you can communicate with them clearly is very, very important.
Wow. No, thank you so much for sharing that story. It's something that's not really spoken about. Like you said, that it's something, that's why I think for you also had a hard time expressing these to other people, especially in academia, that you had to go outside of it to find somebody who's not there.
I don't it's about, graduating in record time, publishing your research papers, graduating cum laude, and you really forget that, hey, wait a minute, what about this person? She's not okay. She's not actually publishing, or she's not writing up. She hasn't gone to collect her data. What's going on? What help do they need? Or they might not even have research funds. So how can we help them to have funds? Meanwhile, I've got about 100,000 Rand of funding every year, but there's this person that I know who never gets funding. But do we really reach out to them to say, hey, please apply for this. Please sign up for this program. Oh, there's a workshop that helps you how to do ABCD. Please sign up. Those things really, really go a long way, especially in academia, because there's a lot of, depression and mental illness that goes on in higher education more than any other field. And I think the support that we can give ourselves, it goes a long way, because we go through the most.
Definitely, we do. And yeah, Mbali, you've touched on something very important, and this will just follow up to my next question. You do a number of things. You're also a lecturer, and also you've been featured in like newspapers, national TV. This is great, and I'm sure it comes with being seen as a high achiever. But you mentioned now that you were dealing with all of this stuff, that you were suffering in silence, and there's some things that a lot of people probably didn't know, that they only see the good, the celebrations, the congratulations, but they, like as a person, especially in academia, we go through so much. So I just want to ask you, given what you mentioned previously, how do you deal with your mental health and the constant pressure of feeling like you need to do well, or you need to appear like everything is okay when it's actually not? And especially, for example, now during this COVID situation, not everybody's coping well, because we're all coping differently with how all of this is affecting us. So I just wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, sure. And the pressure is real. Yeah, you're all right. People usually see the celebratory side, but they don't get to even find out or ask, how did you actually do it? And if they ask how, they realize that, yay, hectic out there.
Definitely.
The worst pressure for anyone, I would think, is the pressure that you impose on yourself. And I think that's been my biggest problem in life, if I can put it like that. It has to be healthy kind of pressure. Otherwise, you really struggle to maintain a healthy balance. And it's been a big challenge. Being an achiever is not easy, hey? It looks easy, but it's a lot of hard work, and people don't get to see that hard work, actually, especially if you don't talk about it much. But I've had really, really dark days, and because being a postgrad, studying, working, being a Black female, trying to, be the strong person that, does so much. It really takes a toll on a person. And it's taken a toll on me to a point where I've actually also had to seek professional help because, it's been hectic. And in the beginning, seeing psychologists, it really has a bad connotation, and nobody ever wants to say that. I'm actually seeing a psychologist.
Thing.
Yeah. And when you think about it, we lose our loved ones, we lose jobs, people pass away, we fail at certain things, and all of these bad things that happen to us, we pile them on top of each other. But we never really have an outlet.
And we're going through a pandemic.
Exactly. We're going through a pandemic, but you're still expected to produce as much work as you would in a normal work environment, which I think is really unfair, But like I said, I have seen a psychologist before when things were really, really bad. I think one of my worst years in life was during my master's when I lost my granny. And even beginning of my PhD as well, with all the drama, with my supervisors and all of that stuff, it's really been bad. And I've tried to kind of cope with it, but it wasn't working out. So then I sought professional help. At first, it was very embarrassing. I won't lie. Seeing a psychologist, you think to yourself, am I going crazy?
Crazy,
who else do I know that's actually going to see a psychologist? But then you realize when you're in there that, hey, this person, they're actually out here to give me practical help that I can actually use. So now I know that when I feel like things are going to take a turn, I know what to do, and I know when to seek help, and I know the triggers, and I know exactly what to do. And had I not sought professional help, then I don't think I would be actually coping better today. So I think as people, we have to really be strong and admit it when we need help, and then be bold enough to take that step to actually get help, because it really, really does a world of a difference. There are higher risks of psychiatric disorders in academia than in any other field. But it's very strange to find someone who speaks openly about their mental health challenges in academia. we're always ready to congratulate them on publishing. We're ready to congratulate them on their next research project. We're ready to congratulate them on their next funding, on their next grant. But we don't really see the toll that it takes on a person before it even gets to where they are. So I think we have to kind of make, depression and mental illnesses a thing that we can comfortably talk about so that people can really acknowledge that they need help and seek help before it really gets bad, because it can get bad, very bad.
Definitely. And you're right. We need to have more open and honest conversations and just create safe spaces. I think that is the thing that we are taught, or there's a culture that wants deadlines and meeting targets that we forget that we are actually human. And having these type of conversations, for example, you talking so openly about seeing a psychologist, I think it's getting better now. We can talk about this, and one can admit that I've actually, and I think even universities or institutions are getting better at having more psychologists. And I'm not saying that they were not there, just telling their students that, hey, you know what, if things get tough, you can always come and we can talk about it. Just quickly, because, time is quickly going, but I just want you to wrap it up. Given everything that you've told us, your whole journey, it's been very enlightening, and I really enjoyed our conversation. But I just want to say, what advice would you then give to somebody who might be going through what you went through as a postgrad, or just somebody who wants to aspire into STEM or to become the next accidental scientist?
I think my advice for someone who's really going through the most, I think I know it's been said before, but I'm going to say it because it does help. Find someone that you can really open up to, who's really older than you, and then try and seek professional help if you can, because it really... It works. They give you advice that really, 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 really works. And you get to be outside of your zone for that time while you get advice. So really seek advice from a person who's older than you within your institution. And then I would advise and say, try and find something that you don't mind reading as a bedtime story to do. Because it means you love it. Nobody wants a bedtime story that sucks. But that's what I would say. But I really think focusing on your mental health is incredibly important. So when you find triggers, reading about it, really have the guts to go and seek help, because it's academia and higher education and research. It's a lot of work. And people don't really realize it until they go through it. But I think that's what I can say.
Oh man, lovely. This was such an amazing conversation. You've been so open, you've been so honest, and I think there's so many people who, after listening to you and your story, will relate, will find themselves in some of those stories. And I hope that you speaking out, they can also feel have that bravado, be it if it's your supervisor student relationship, or just be it your normal mental health or anything, or just like you said, asking yourself, is this something that I really want to do? Is this something that I'm passionate about, that I want to read when I sleep? So thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you so much, and this was so much fun. Especially during lockdown. It's so refreshing. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And just to everybody else, once again, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, and with an E. Until next time, goodbye.